Good afternoon, my name is Olga Tavanova, and I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. Today is day 478 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian occupiers, and now we will be talking about our financial system during the war. Our speaker today is Vasyl Furman, the member of the board of the National Bank of Ukraine. Good afternoon, Mr. Vasyl. Good afternoon, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Mr. Vasyl, so what is the situation in our financial system? What is the situation with international financial aid? Well, putting it in simple words, the banking system with the National Bank of Ukraine stably maintains the financial defense of our country. Well, first of all, talking about the goals set by the National Bank of Ukraine in front of the banking system from the very first days of the war, they are all fulfilled. For example, maintenance of the accounts of the legal entities and individuals. And I want to add that the total amount of funds in the banking system within the days of war increased more than 504 billion hryvnias. Talking about the hryvnia deposits of the individuals, they increased 44% in the banking system of Ukraine. We see that the individuals, the citizens of Ukraine, along with the businesses, they trust the banking system of Ukraine. Also, there was another goal set, such as uninterrupted operation, 24/7 operation of the banking system, and this task is also fulfilled. We're also talking about lending the National Bank of Ukraine. Well, the banking system continues lending the businesses and individuals. Some indicators decrease, some indicators increase. We have the state program 579, within which the banking system is actively working with the business. So during these days of war, there were more than 28,000 loans extended to the small and medium-sized businesses for the amount exceeding 113 billion hryvnias. Talking about NPLs, the non-performing loans in the banking system, the share of such loans increased significantly since the beginning of the year and accounts for 39.5%. It was 38% on the 1st of January. So talking about the proceeds, about the income, the proceeds of the banking system within the first 4 months of this year amounts to 44 billion hryvnias. This is why, thanks to the correct actions of the National Bank of Ukraine, thanks to the reforms which were implemented within the 8 years before the beginning of the big war, we are able currently to maintain the normal operation of the banking system. The inflation is under control. For example, in May, the inflation rate was about 15%, which is a great plus. National Bank of Ukraine recently stated that, for example, if we talk about the review of the monetary policy in the beginning of the year, we were saying that it's about to happen in the first quarter of the next year, and then we were putting together the macroeconomic forecast. We were already saying that we would proceed to the softening of the monetary policy in the end of this year, but if the positive factors coincide, probably National Bank will proceed to this softening policy even earlier, which is another positive factor for everybody. In short, the banking system continues its normal operation. People still trust the banking system. Those problems that arise are being promptly solved by the banking system. Remember those problems in 2014, 2015 with the inflation or with the non-performing banks, failing banks in the banking system. such situation does not exist anymore. There are professional actions implemented by the National Bank of Ukraine, plus the significant financial aid by our international partners. By the way, I'll proceed to your question. You asked about the international support. So one of the factors that helps us today to stably maintain the financial defense is the international aid, thanks to which we have this macroeconomic stability, thanks to our international partners, which we appreciate a lot. The deficit of budget this year is about $42 billion, and this is the planned deficit, which will be covered at the expense of international monetary aid without monetary emission by the National Bank of Ukraine, which is a great plus for our economy, for the banking system, for the currency market, and for the macroeconomic stability. This year we have already received more than $20 billion. Those are the funds of European Union and International Monetary Fund, plus the United States and Canada. But generally we are about to receive $42 billion, including other funds that were negotiated by the government, including the funds for the recovery programs. Mr. Vasyl, thank you very much. I would like to ask you about the situation in the currency market. Maybe you have short-term forecasts. Well, look, the National Bank of Ukraine usually gives no forecasts, but at the same time we can observe and we may hear some estimates by different experts which are quite optimistic. So generally the forecast as to the hryvnia dollar rate is optimistic. Like within the last 2 or 3 months we've been observing hryvnia strengthening against dollar. It's a coincidence of factors, but at the same time I have to emphasize the consequent professional actions of the National Bank of Ukraine, plus the transmission mechanism and international aid. The inflation expectations of our citizens changed to the better, and yet another role is placed by the seasonal factor. In the spring, beginning of the summer, the agrarians started their sowing campaign and they had to spend a lot or sell a lot of their currency proceeds, which influenced the currency rate positively. Within the first days of the war we've changed our monetary regime. We switched to the fixed rate, and it plays incredibly important role for the time being. I mean, the fixed rate. Currently there are no premises at this period to switch from the policy of the fixed rate, and National Bank of Ukraine sees no such grounds, because the reorientation of the course may negatively impact the competitiveness of our exporters, of our businesses. For example, if the National Bank wants to devalue hryvnia, that will impact the competitiveness of the businesses, but the flexible rate may result in further strengthening of hryvnia against dollar. Another plus is our currency reserves, which for the time being amount to more than $37 billion. And if we talk about the situation at the cash market, in my opinion as an expert, you've asked, so the situation will be such in the short-term perspective as we continue observing today, which creates the premises for gradual softening of administrative restrictions and perspectives of proceeding to more flexible rate policy. If in future, we were talking about it already, if National Bank of Ukraine is about to proceed to the flexible floating rate we will have to create certain preconditions. What are such preconditions? That's definitely accumulation of the currency reserves. As I mentioned, they are big enough. They are at 11 years maximum, in fact. It's clear that such softening of policy will result in softening of another factors like admission to the market of bigger number of participants and the sustainable decrease of inflation according to the planned trajectory of the National Bank of Ukraine, decreasing of the exchange rate, interest rate, and adaptiveness to the situational factors. So we're not talking about some specific dates when National Bank is about to proceed to the flexible and floating rate policy. And according to our agreement with IMF, by the end of June, we just have to show our roadmap on this matter, and this matter is currently negotiated with the key stakeholders, but it's not supposed to have any specific dates. So as soon as we have all those positive preconditions coinciding, the National Bank of Ukraine will proceed to the floating rate, lifting those currency restrictions that were implemented in the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Thank you very much for this information, dear colleagues. If you have any questions, please proceed. Good afternoon, Vladislav Obuch, Ukrinform. The first question is about the problem that Ukrainians were facing in May and June. I mean, the worn banknotes, and those banknotes were not accepted by our banking institutions. The National Bank already posted an explanation, and there was a statement that this problem will be solved shortly. So what is your recipe? What is your solution for this problem? Because obviously the regulator will not react to each and every complaint by the consumers, measuring the stance with the ruler. And another question is, do you have a recipe for solution of the problem of non-performing loans, or are non-performing loans the problems of the banks themselves? Well, thank you very much for your questions. Regarding the first question, I will probably start from the end. The problem will be solved shortly. I have some insiders information. I don't want to focus on them, but the market will continue working just in the same way that it was working a number of months before. We didn't have this problem, right? That's the first thing. There's a lot of myth around this matter, and we have to say that the first myth is that the banknotes dated 1996 and before are not exchanged. Because I personally called a number of banks, Ashad Bank, Private Bank, and other medium-sized banks. They were all accepting, and they will continue accepting all the banknotes dated 1996 or even earlier, just like any other banknotes. So it's not a problem. The problem is about the level of the worn, the extent to which the banknotes are worn. So the heads of the financial companies that own the exchange points and the commercial banks, we had discussion with them, and the summary of this discussion is that shortly this matter will be solved. People don't have to get concerned, first of all, and second, I want to emphasize that generally dollar is now is a measure of savings. You remember previously the rate for dollars deposit was more than 10%. Now we don't have such rates in the banks. Now this rate is below 1% in the medium-sized banks. It's up to 3% probably. And now talking about savings, you can rather make something on that bank deposits in hryvnias, the rate for which reaches almost 15%, and also the internal bonds with the rate of more than 20%. So it's more profitable to use these financial instruments. But please don't get concerned about the dollar servants. The situation will be solved quite shortly. And please remind me about the second question. It's about the NPLs. Well, about the NPLs, I've given you the total number, 39.5% as of today. But again, we have to be talking about the NPLs in some specific banks, because it's mostly state-owned banks that have the NPLs, and that's their heritage. We know that the big empire, Privat Bank, when we know that those problems, they arisen after the nationalization of the bank. The loans were extended to some associated persons, associated entities. But talking about the new loans which were extended after the year 2014, the share of NPLs extended after the year 2014, they're insignificant, insubstantial. Obviously, depending on the strategy of the bank, we have to see what NPLs they have. If we talk about big private banks, the NPLs amount to less than 10%, sometimes less than 5% in certain banks. It depends on whom the bank was lending to, where the bank was located, which regions was it working in. So all those issues arising in the banking system, they will be solved at the expense of the profits of the banking system. I mentioned that within the last 4 months, the banking system received more than 44 billion hryvnia. In case of necessity, those proceeds may be used for covering of the NPLs. So the banking system keeps operating, and there are no such problematic issues that were arising back in 2014-15. The National Bank of Ukraine will conduct a stress test of the banking system, and 90% of the banking system, the first 20 banks of Ukraine, once again we will analyze their loan portfolio, their assets, and probably in case of necessity there will be stress tests implemented, but they will not influence the condition of the banking system in general. I think it's generally in good condition now. Mr. Vasyl, thank you very much for joining our broadcast. I'm reminding you, dear colleagues, joining us was Vasyl Furman, the member of the board of the National Bank of Ukraine. Thanks for being with us today, and we continue working for our victory. Thank our armed forces and all of the security and defense forces, and glory to Ukraine.